My name is Claire Miller, and I'm 34. I'm an executive in the music industry, a world where dreams can be as fleeting as the music itself. But today, the melody echoing in my mind is a symphony of betrayal. The studio lights blaze, reflecting the anticipation of a show that will never happen. I sit in the corner, watching my younger brother Michael as he prepares. The tension in the air is palpable. The weight of the record deal he holds in his hands feels strangely heavy. The one thing he never knew, I think, is that talent can be sharper than any sword. My gaze fixes on the treacherous confidence of his posture, the way he adjusts the sleeves of his white shirt, completely oblivious to what his heart and spirit are about to face. The pride etched on his face is infuriating. I was there in every moment of our childhood supporting him, investing every penny of my savings in his artistic ambitions. To me, he was always a promising talent. To him, I was an obstacle, a sister hindering his success. My thoughts seem to bubble as I control my breathing, aware that the truth crystallizes before me like a dark reflection. I recall the moments when music united us. We were inseparable, dancing to the sound of the notes coming from the old guitar our father bought at a clearance sale. Michael always appreciated my contribution, but now it all seems like a draft of a story I barely managed to write. The revelation comes as a blow. Michael is not only my brother, but also my rival. A rival fueled by unchecked ambition, who betrayed me by trading my trust for a contract he didn't deserve. The first time I heard about the chosen record label, my heart soared. I believed I would finally see Michael shine. But now, the betrayal has spread like wildfire among the strings of a guitar. A moment of doubt crosses my mind. It's the only weakness I allow myself. Deep down, a voice whispers, "What if he succeeds?" I stand up, feeling the weight of my unease, and walk to the window. I look at the sky, seeking clarity, a space where resentment doesn't overwhelm my mind. Shattered mirrors of the reality we live in surround me. The music that once bound us now transforms into an echo of pretense and disillusionment. And the only thing that fills the void is the rage that begins to pulse inside me, like a metronome marking the time of my new mission. Through the half-opened curtain, I glimpse the admiring gazes of a crowd gathered outside, eager to see our rising star. But what they don't know is that the star that will light my path now shines from behind me. My stomach churns. How could you, Michael? The question repeats itself in my mind like a mantra, an endless repetition that makes me feel like I've been underestimated. I am more than a symbol of support. I am an invisible force behind many successes. The past sacrifices would not be in vain. I can't let this end like this. My brother's broken promises have become my new reality. A plan begins to form in my mind, a blend of determination and coldness. The talent he forgot doesn't reside only in the notes he plays, but in the strategy I will create to ensure justice is served. With that, I leave the studio, the cool wind enveloping me as I exit. The city breathes the vibrant atmosphere of music, but my heart agrees with the melody of vengeance preparing its solo. A new focus emerges, as a spark ignites a fire. The pieces on the board are moving, and the battle ahead will not just be about who has more talent, it will be about who plays their game better. I look at my brother one last time, convinced he can silence me. But he forgot, and now the dance of revenge is about to begin. He will forget that talent can be sharper than any sword. This phrase echoes in my mind, promising the return of what truly matters, the justice that will carve its way through the betrayal. In the face of the gathering shadows, the harmony of vengeance becomes my new symphony. The sun was setting slowly, enveloping the city in a pale gold. The shadows began to stretch, and with them, the memories of my childhood arose in waves, like the tides that lap the sand on the beach. Memories of days that seemed to stretch into eternity, when music was our only language, and our dreams, our only destination. Michael and I were brave children, immune to the constraints of what life would one day impose on us. In those days, it was just the two of us, dreaming together and tying the knots of creativity with every chord, every rhyme, every song we created in our backyard. A tightness in my chest accompanies me as the images unfold in my mind. I remember Michael running across the lawn, his smile radiating happiness as he played the first chords of his guitar, not yet knowing that one day these chords would echo in an abyss of betrayal. "Claire, look what I wrote," he would exclaim, the sparkle in his eyes that only a child could have. I, his older sister and eternally proud, always applauded his creations. That passion was contagious. He was my brother, but also my friend, my accomplice. The music had the power to unite us viscerally, and in every note, I thought we would be inseparable. I was there, at every moment of his childhood, supporting him, investing everything I could in his artistic ambitions. But as the years went by and reality set in, the music became a battlefield. From adolescence, when we started dreaming of the music industry, I realized the line between support and competition was starting to blur. For him, the burning desire to prove his worth was a burden. For me, it was a responsibility. I remember the fateful day I decided to invest my savings in his first album. Enthusiasm shone in his face, but behind the innocence was a seed of ambition. Michael always believed that big dreams were meant to be realized. To me, he would always be the small artist struggling to shine. In fact, the signs were all there. When he started negotiating with producers and record labels, a shadow of doubt crept into my heart. What happened to the boy who only dreamed of composing? What had been lost along the way? Over time, the broken promises became an unbearable burden. "Claire, you need to understand this isn't about you." Those words echoed in our conflicts, a wound that never healed. The shine in his eyes dulled, and his gaze shifted from what we once loved. Music, our language, became a source of discord, a shattered mirror of the frustrations we both carried. Ironically, in this tragic scenario, I discovered that my devotion could turn into poison. Moments of joy, those in which we sat in a park rehearsing melodies under the blue sky, now seemed faded by shadows of betrayal. Each note of Michael's guitar became further from the harmony we experienced together. He had become the artist who didn't need me, and I, a shadow of someone who once believed loyalty could prevail. With each new album he released, more reports of disagreements surfaced and the dissonance between us intensified. Love became a poisoned memory, tainted by jealousy and overwhelming ambition. Then, the music industry, brutal and beyond what I imagined, revealed itself as a battle arena, where talents were swallowed and dreams became mere contracts. Here, the coldness of reality fell upon me, and I realized that every investment I had made to boost my brother's career hadn't been in vain. It was the fragility of a family bond, tripled by the pain of betrayal. I turned to the desk in my office, surrounded by shadows that projected a feeling of hope, but also immense determination. It was time to act. Opening my laptop, the light from the screen illuminated my face, revealing the intensity growing within me. I began reviewing financial documents, contracts, and projects involving Michael and his record label. It was all I needed to understand that I was about to enter a minefield. Analyzing trends in the music market, I gleaned information that became clues to a new symphony. I wrote in a notebook. Deep industry knowledge would become my trump card. With music as a tool, there was still a new path to explore that I had never considered before. Market analysis and business management strategies. The focus was on turning pain into a multiplying force, fueling my plans as I breathed the vibrant atmosphere of the city. It wasn't just about surpassing Michael, but about repositioning the narrative told about me. He forgot that dark talents can be transformed into a powerful gesture in the right hands, and those hands would be mine. But as the sun set again, hitting the horizon, there was a weight in my heart. Michael was more than an artist. He was my brother, my blood. This made the betrayal an even more unbearable poison. The line between love and hate became thinner with each passing day, but I couldn't allow myself to hesitate. The justice I craved would come with pain, and I would need to cling to a purpose greater than my resentment. That's when a phrase began to echo in my mind, with every breath. This isn't just about what Michael took from me, but about what I'm about to achieve. The sun setting that afternoon promised a new dawn, a new destiny where justice and execution would merge into a new melody. I was about to create a new harmony, the harmony of revenge. It was the beginning of a composition that promised to offer much more than simple chords. It was a symphony where talent and strategy would intertwine to expose the truth. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air as I settled into a table at a hidden cafe in the city center. The place was discreet, but full of life. Artists and dreamers mingled amidst whispers and laughter, each on their own journey in pursuit of success in the music industry. It was the perfect environment for me, both welcoming and conducive to strategy. At that moment, my table would become the headquarters of my investigation. I pulled a notebook from my bag, ready to outline each step that would lead me to understand Michael's maneuvers and uncover the weaknesses of the record label he was trying to conquer. I opened a blank page, and the tip of the pen hovered in the air, as if waiting for inspiration. Strategic reasoning began to form in my mind, mapping the network of contacts, exploring the power dynamics, and gathering valuable information. I started with the basics, the record label's contracts. I used my laptop to check the latest news, economic updates, and the artists associated with it. I looked up the sales statistics and audience numbers of the artists Michael admired. With each line added to the spreadsheet, my determination grew, as did the clarity about Michael's intentions. He was grateful and hopeful, but his blind ambition would send him tumbling down a precipice. Throughout the morning, I absorbed information like a sponge. My old mentor, George, showed up at the cafe, his familiar face tinged with regret at seeing the situation I was in. He, a former music producer, was one of the few who knew my true capabilities. "Claire, you can't let this bring you down," he said, his worried gaze breaking my focus. "Use this as fuel." His words echoed in my mind as I observed the interactions in the cafe. The dialogue between George and me, now almost a composition, brought new elements to my research. Thanks to him, I had access to encrypted information that could offer valuable insights into Michael and his allies. I delved into social media and music websites. With each click, I discovered more about the record label, where Michael dreamed of establishing himself and its owner, Gregory Hayes. On his profile, I saw a man shrouded in mystery, a renowned producer who diabetically excelled at launching new talent. But amidst all this success, something bothered me. Gregory had a reputation for being a man with questionable interests, who often exploited the weaknesses of those around him for personal gain. I needed more information about Gregory. Between cups of coffee, 3, to be exact, I drew a chart connecting Michael, his band, his record label, and Gregory. The lines connecting each element seemed challenging, but each one, like a chord, created a structure I could manipulate. "They think they're in control, but I'll guide them to my stage," I murmured to myself, a new resolution taking shape. That afternoon, as the sun bid farewell, I paid a visit to Michael's office. From the outside, the building was clad in a gleaming steel facade. Inside, it was a cave full of illusions. I sustained some impressions as a form of infiltration. The details of Michael's contract with the record label were exposed on his desk. The mistake, of course, was that he didn't care who he had to bring down to succeed. My hands trembled as I examined the documents. Among them, I found one that stood out, one that outlined the terms of his contract and the exclusivity clauses. Looking at the papers, I realized that a breach of contract could be the opportunity I was looking for. With some analysis, I managed to draw up a list of the most promising artists from the record label's roster. Artists who weren't just disposable. They have potential, and an idea began to echo in my mind. The plan was starting to take shape. After tense moments, I obtained concrete proof that Gregory was involving Michael in a series of arrangements that could ruin his career. The download of information I managed to access during that visit or before was strategic. Michael had no idea that I was observing him from an unknown perspective. Interruptions and distractions were inevitable, but I was determined. I delved deeper into the search for evidence, talking to artists who were in a similar position to Michael's. With each connection, with each shared story, my understanding of the music industry expanded and fueled my search. One artist, Fernanda, a young and promising singer who had been discarded by Gregory, was more than willing to share her experiences. In a sunny cafe, she launched into a passionate narrative about the price ambition can exact. "He only cares about numbers, not people," Fernanda said, her voice trembling slightly. I felt like I was in an experiment. It was as if he was molding my life to fit his mold, and I didn't even get a thank you in the end. Her words cut deep, reinforcing my determination and teaching me about the complexities of the music world. After weeks of strengthening data, I hired an expert to analyze Michael's contracts and his involvement with Gregory. The analysis not only portrayed a panorama, but made me aware of a secret key that could be used in my favor. I realized that by understanding every detail of Michael's project, I could find a way to rewrite the narrative. My situation was transforming as each detail fitted into a broader picture. And it was at that moment that the idea solidified, like a chord completing itself in a crescendo. What if I supplanted Michael in his own record label, using his weaknesses against him to reaffirm my space in the industry and reclaim the trust he had broken? The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I began to feel a new force pulsing within me, a force derived from the pains, the sacrifices I made over the years. He may think he's in control, but he doesn't know what he's about to face, I thought, as the melody of justice unfolded in my mind, singing in tune with a new beginning. Certain that the goddess of music was on my side, I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the next phase of my plan. The harmony of revenge was about to transform into a concert that Michael would never forget. Weeks bled into months. As the sun rose over the city skyline, my plan began to take shape. I immersed myself in the music industry, conducting thorough research and forging connections to gather the information I needed. The world that once belonged to Michael was now within my grasp, and the strategy I was building was methodical, like a carefully crafted symphony. Every note had to be in its place for the climax of my plan to be perfect. One evening, while reviewing the documents I had obtained, a detail caught my eye. The record label's royalty payment structure was opaque, riddled with ambiguous clauses that could be manipulated. "This is gold," I thought, scribbling down my notes. With this information, I began to see where Michael could be vulnerable. Looking at the whiteboard in my office, covered in charts and interconnections about the label, I realized everything was coming together. The diagram I had drawn outlined the interactions and hierarchy within the company. Michael was at the center, surrounded by talents who could easily fall prey to his schemes. The corporate culture Gregory had created was ruthless, but now I had the opportunity to position myself as the opposing force to this oppression. On a particularly clear morning, I decided to contact some of the record label's former artists who had been dropped. I remembered the story of a singer who, after achieving recognition, was suddenly cast aside without explanation. A phone call here, a direct message there, and soon I was speaking with Richard, a charismatic musician who, despite being out of the spotlight, maintained an influential social circle. "Richard, do you remember what it was like leaving the label?" I asked, gauging his reaction. He hesitated, but the frustration in his voice quickly turned into a torrent of emotion. "I didn't know, Claire. Everything seemed promising, but as soon as Gregory saw me as a risk, it was over. He cut everything off." His voice hardened, the rage of betrayal clearly evident. "So what do you want? Are you planning to play his game?" "I'm planning to change the rules," I replied enigmatically, piquing his interest. "You might have what I need to do that." He seemed intrigued, and that curiosity was enough for him to agree to meet me in person. When we met, our gazes confirmed a mutual connection. We both knew what it was like to be discarded by someone who swore to be a friend. Richard began to reveal not only information about the label, but also about Gregory's practices. What I already suspected was confirmed. He exploited artists, manipulating contracts and feeding off the hopes of young dreamers. As he spoke, I noted every word, every indication of weakness that could be used to my advantage. "So the problem is, he doesn't care about talent. But about image, right? I asked, seeking to understand the power dynamic. Richard confirmed, a spark of determination appearing in his eyes. Yes, most artists don't realize it in time. They end up voiceless. If you can get his attention focused on the mistakes he's making, you could be the idea he never had. The conversation unfolded as I shaped his words into a strategy that echoed in my mind. A subtle dance of manipulation and opportunity. In the days that followed, I delved deeper into my search for evidence, speaking with artists who were in similar situations to Michael's. With each connection I made, with each story shared, my understanding of the mechanisms of the music market expanded. One of these artists, Fernanda, was a promising young singer who had been discarded by Gregory, and she was more than willing to share her experience. In a small, sunny cafe, Fernanda launched into a passionate account of the price ambition can exact. He only cares about numbers, not people, Fernanda said, her voice trembling slightly. I felt like I was in an experiment. It was as if he was molding my life to fit his mold, and I didn't even get a thank you at the end. Her words cut deep, reinforcing my determination and teaching me about the complexities of the music world. Her experiences were filled with raw emotion, a story of betrayal similar to my own. I needed every fragment of that narrative as fuel to shape my own trajectory. When she finished, I was fully aware that the music industry needed a change. What Gregory was doing wasn't just unfair, it was predatory, and I was determined to reverse it. During our conversations, I made inroads that left me feeling more confident. With Fernanda and Richard on board, I decided to form a coalition of artists who, united, could challenge the abuses of Michael's record label. With Richard's help, I invited other former members and new talents who were ready to break free. The studio I used for the meetings often became a sacred space, where voices that had been silenced by ambition began to resonate. At the same time, I realized another piece was beginning to fit into the puzzle. Michael's contract with the record label required him to maintain certain performance and popularity conditions. These aspects offered a golden opportunity. If he failed to meet expectations, everything could crumble. My infiltration tactics weren't just about personal revenge. They were about transforming the landscape where Michael had positioned himself as an icon into a battlefield where the talented would finally have their voices heard. I devised a concrete strategy, organizing a charity event bringing together all the artists in the coalition, a celebration highlighting true talent in a live show. The idea was that, on a night where everyone would have a chance to shine, Michael's light, which until then had overshadowed the scene, would begin to lose its aura. I invited artists who weren't under Gregory's control, who had already suffered his injustices, and together we began creating collaborative songs that captured the essence of our experiences. With each rehearsal, I felt I was building a new anthem, a song of resistance that could not only expose the record label's problems, but also win over the audience's hearts. This would be our direct response to Gregory's oppression, and, at the same time, a way to rekindle the creative flame that had once been overshadowed by his unfair practices. Along the way, industry interactions became more frequent and complex. I needed to be sharp in my emotional and strategic intelligence. Conversations with Gregory were coming, and he was an astute opponent. I knew that by drawing the line between talent and weakness, I could create an advantage that would surprise him. Other artists might be planning to unite, but I had a personal history of betrayal that could be used as the ultimate weapon. The day of the charity event arrived, and anxiety was in the air. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, I sat backstage, surrounded by all the talent that had united for a greater cause. The energy on stage was a reflection of what I was trying to achieve in the shadows. I was doing what Michael could never do, uniting voices to challenge the tyranny that ambition could impose. When the lights went down and the first song began to play, I recognized that the harmony of revenge had become a concert in which everyone had a vital role. I felt that every note, every chord, and every verse echoed far, not only through the halls of the venue, but also through the hearts of the people in front of the stage. My mind was on fire with the potential of that moment. I knew that tensions were rising, that Michael and Gregory were about to attend the event. They couldn't ignore the silent revolt that was taking shape right before their eyes. As the voices united, the idea of justice became increasingly real, and the symphony of revenge became a collective cry of resistance. At that moment, I realized that the fight wasn't just mine. It was for everyone who had been silenced, for everyone who wanted to be part of a bigger action. My journey was just beginning, but the melody that had begun to play promised that there would be much more to come. The harmony of revenge wasn't just a composition. It was a new path that was finally opening up for all of us, and it was ready to be released. The atmosphere in the auditorium was electrifying, pulsating with the energy of the voices that had united in the name of justice. The charity event wasn't just a musical performance. It was a resounding declaration of the fight against the abuses that permeated the industry. As the artists performed one by one, empathy and passion filled the space. My emotions were raw, but logic seethed in my mind like a conductor leading an orchestra about to reach its grand climax. From the box, I could distinguish Michael and Gregory. Michael's gaze was fixed on the stage, confused to see so many familiar faces united without his command. Gregory, on the other hand, watched with a critical air, as if projecting his power over us. It was clear that neither of them had any idea of the true revolt that was brewing before their eyes. As the music continued to flow, the carefully rehearsed words in my mind began to materialize into a bolder plan. When I sensed the moment to give voice to the denouncement I so longed for, I realized that it wasn't enough to just gather the artists. It was time to unite their stories, their journeys of pain and resilience, in a powerful outcry that could echo not only in the room, but throughout the industry as a whole. With a roar of determination, I would call the attention not only of those in the audience, but of everyone who had been touched by the music industry, known for its cruelty. In a moment of pure collective energy, the amplifier was about to transform into a virtual stage for the truth. The music was no longer just an artistic expression. It was a weapon forged in trauma, a symphony of resistance that could well shake the foundations of Gregory's manipulations. Then, I took a deep breath and grabbed the microphone, ready to unleash the truth under the fluorescent light. "Good evening," I began, my voice charged with emotion. "Tonight we are not only celebrating music. We are here to confront a reality that has often been atrocious. The industry we all work in is a battlefield that many times is based on unbridled ambition and exploitation." I looked around, the expectant faces encouraging me as the audience checked if they would recognize the pain that had so often been silenced. As artists, we are often led to believe that we must sacrifice our dreams in favor of formulas that benefit only a few. It's time to rewrite that narrative. The inspiration that unites us can become an unshakable force. The words began to flow with more intensity, each phrase carrying the weakness I had experienced, transforming into a cry against oppression. It was a decisive moment. In the front rows, I saw Michael fidget. His face showed a mix of apprehension and anger. Gregory's eyes, however, were cold, like a snake watching its prey, but knowing danger was about to strike. The audience stirred, and I sensed the truth was finally unfolding, each word a blow against the status quo. "Do you remember the stories of our brothers and sisters who paid a high price for their hopes? What we're doing here isn't just about us. It's about lives and dreams that need to be honored. It's about all those who were silenced, exploited, and discarded by a decade of abuse." My voice resonated through the auditorium, and a wave of applause followed. The tension was almost palpable. The energy of the audience vibrated, uniting the hearts and voices of artists who, until recently, felt isolated. Everyone there was now ready to act. As I continued, I described the injustices that had permeated our paths, the traps Gregory had set, Michael's broken promises that had led so many to despair. "Enough!" I exclaimed, raising my hands, seeking connection in the faces before me. "Today is the day we break free. We will no longer be victims. We are a legion of voices that will not be silenced. Michael, Gregory, the era of tyranny ends here." Wide-eyed faces and fearless smiles illuminated a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Without warning, I signaled to start the pre-prepared video, a powerful clip that interwove testimonials from artists who had felt the weight of control and manipulation. The faces of people who had been left behind appeared on the screen, along with their stories. Tears, declarations of faith, and dreams crushed by the selfish ambition of a handful of men. It was a profound and powerful shock. Michael stood, his eyes narrowed in confusion and disdain. He wanted to interrupt, but the audience was already revolting against this revelation. Both the emotional pressure of the music and the images of injustice were causing the audience to react against the cruel tyranny he and Gregory had imposed. When the video ended, the auditorium echoed with thunderous applause, and I knew that right there, in that moment, things had changed. A wave of revolt erupted in the minds of everyone present. It was as if a silent pact had been made. Together, we raised our voices, and the power of the collective became an anthem of resistance. The exhaustion and worry on Michael's face became visible. He walked toward Gregory, like a cornered animal seeking shelter. Gregory, visibly agitated, tried to regain control of the situation, and in a loud, nervous voice exclaimed, "This isn't a spectacle. This is ridiculous. You're just a bunch of losers." The attempt to belittle our struggle was formulaic and transparent, revealing the chasm forming between him and the audience. But instead of silencing the voices echoing in the room, his statement only generated more applause, more determination. "We're not losers, Gregory. You're the one who gave us the strength to fight," retorted Richard, staring at the producer with a defiant look. The strength where there had been weakness now erupted like an army about to conquer victory. The following round of applause reached an impressive crescendo. Michael tried to stand again, but the audience's indignation was deafening. Receiving a clearly negative response made it clear to him that his defense was no longer welcome. If the atmosphere was about to explode, it was an outcry for change. "You can't stop us. Today our voices will rise higher than ever. What are we afraid of? Of you? Of your threats? We are the change," I shouted once more, the crowd already in unison, firm around me. The auditorium was now in a true state of euphoria, people joining their voices in a powerful chorus that echoed uncontrollably. There, in that space of music and resistance, we all became increasingly aware that we were not just artists or mere figures in the music industry. We were fighters. The music that started playing immediately afterward was our new song, a composition created for this night. The lyrics spoke of freedom, resilience, and unity. More importantly, it reflected the desire never to be manipulated again. It was clear there was no turning back. The past couldn't be erased, but the future could be shaped. As the performance unfolded and the stage lights shone on us all, I poured my heart into every note, every word accumulating as a new revolutionary manifesto. It was a clarion call that this fight was not just about a personal issue against Michael, but against a system that finally had a worthy opponent. And with that, our voices didn't just fill the auditorium. They were vibrating beyond its walls, echoing in the streets, and the songs of resistance were beginning to be heard on every corner. The era of oppression was wearing down, and music was no longer the weapon of the controller, but the anthem of freedom. This day, marked by revolt and joy, would be a landmark in history. As the extent of the battle loomed, it was clear to me. A new harmony was emerging from the pain. The harmony of revenge, now rising in a symphony that was about to transform the world. The night of the charity event unfolded like a topsy-turvy fairy tale. The audience's energy still echoed in my mind, and as I left the stage, a wave of adrenaline and nervousness washed over me. A mix of emotions, the euphoria of a momentary victory, intertwined with the imminent approach of Michael and Gregory, who, now more than ever, would do anything to turn the tide. As the press conference began, I faced the microphone, remembering this was the perfect chance to expose not only my feelings, but the hidden truth that Michael and Gregory were desperately trying to shield. I needed to be sharp, and every word, every question I faced, would be another note played in the symphony of resistance we had created together. Michael, in his usual air of superiority, seemed nervous and restless, while Gregory, a more enraged serpent, watched from afar, weaving his web of manipulations. The press conference started with Michael taking the floor. He was prepared to defend himself, his arrogant and confident tone evident as he claimed there were misunderstandings about the record label. "What happened that night was an attempt to destabilize what we've built," he began, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "We, at the record label, always strive for the best for our artists. It's all a scheme to conquer the music market, and nights like last night only serve to create confusion that's not part of our focus." He had created a grand theatrical spectacle, pretending not only to care about recent events, but maintaining a mask of control and arrogance. But this was just a performance, and I was ready to expose the charade. The audience, who once admired him as a shining star, now began to see the cracks in his perfect facade. I stood up as soon as he finished, adrenaline coursing through my veins like dreams of freedom. "Michael, you're entitled to your controlling vision, but you must understand that what we experienced and what you're trying to impose on us isn't called best for the artists. It's exploitation," I said, each word flowing from me like harmonious music. "You talk about a conquest scheme, but what you've really propagated is a time of oppression. Controlling artists isn't the same as nurturing them. You forget that we are human beings, not mere machines in service of increased profit." The reactions in the room began to shift. The reporter's tone changed from sympathy to a sharp perception of the truth. It was as if every question they had been asking was uncovering the reality we so desperately needed to confront. The eyes of those present were no longer on Michael, but on the fight each artist was willing to wage. This wasn't just the story of a sibling rivalry, but the revelation of a malevolent system that needed to be purged. Analyzing the atmosphere, I felt the tension rise. Gregory, visibly irritated, intervened. "Claire, you must understand that we have nothing to hide. What you call control is simply management. If it weren't for Michael and for us, many of the artists who have reached the public simply wouldn't exist. The industry is a battlefield, and those who don't adapt get hurt." There was a heavy dose of cynicism in his words. Adapt? I wondered what the real price was. Saying it directly wasn't just a challenge. It was an invitation for everyone around me to see beyond what he was proposing. I couldn't succumb to the lie. This was the time to once again expose the web of control extending around us. "Management?" I retorted, maintaining my composure. "What kind of management do you propose when artists are pressured to cut out their essence due to the demands of an extortionate record label? Isn't that what we call control? Whom do you serve, Michael? The numbers or the missing songs?" The auditorium became a minefield of reactions, murmurs, and questions. Michael paused and looked at the audience, and in that moment he realized the game had changed, and the score was reset in a true clamor for transformation. The words that were meant to serve only them now also resonated among the voices and hearts of the audience. The press's questions started to increase. "What about the contracts you impose? What do you do to ensure that artists are not mere puppets in your show?" A reporter with a provocative look questioned, giving voice to the feelings everyone there sought to express. These contracts were designed to maximize results, but what we knew was that they were leaked with benefits only for certain people. Michael attempted a cold response, but his eyes betrayed his loss of confidence. "Actually, it's not enough to consider only the perspective of those who sign," I argued. "It's about generating a culture of accessibility and respect. There's a human and professional side that I'm sure is much bigger than this artifice that you paint as splendid. Who will really get hurt in this game?" The murmurs increased, and the dynamic was changing. More and more, the public was feeling the anxiety and the desire to challenge the norms. We weren't just artists lined up in a performance. We were a community in protest, seeking space for truth, a space for creation that exalts individuality. As the press conference progressed, Michael, increasingly entangled in his web of rhetoric, began to lose his composure. The certainty that this day would be a watershed moment grew stronger. He was facing a possible collapse, and that's what we all wanted him to start understanding. The control he had simply couldn't exist anymore. "And at the end of the day, this fight is just the beginning," I said, feeling my voice deepen. and I can promise you that all the artists united here won't stop. This isn't just about a one-night event they want to use as a curveball in their success story. It's about opening doors and showing what music should be. No longer vulnerable, but creators. The fervent words resonated through the auditorium, and I saw a vibrant capacity for revolution. The gazes, in unison, reflected that the desire for transformation had settled deeply. Michael didn't know how to respond. His commanding posture began to slip, remaining only as a shadow of what it once was. Gregory tried to regain control, gesturing desperately, but this was having the opposite effect. Finally, the press conference ended, and I realized clearly that our fight hadn't been just against them, but against a system that needed restructuring so that music would become the true message of freedom and not censorship. What was once a family conflict was now a collective call to action. As I left that place, I realized I had not only recovered the confidence Michael had tried to undermine, but also pursued truth and authenticity in all its fullness. The fight for our cause was more alive than ever. The press conference wasn't the end, but a new beginning. And the road ahead would be full of challenges, but also of a renewed spirit. The harmony of revenge was already echoing like a concert under construction. The voices of resistance were only beginning to join, and I needed to be ready for everything that would come. The foundation of our new reality was being solidified with each chord, each note that emerged from pain and transformed into something even more beautiful. I moved forward, determined to make a difference, where finally, everyone would have the opportunity to have their stories told. Victory was looming on the horizon, and I knew that the music playing had a higher purpose than we could imagine. We were fighting not only for ourselves, but for all those who had not yet found their voices on the world's path, and our melody of freedom was only beginning to unfold. The days after the benefit event were electrifying. The impact of our performance spread like wildfire through the music industry. What began as a plan for revenge transformed into a powerful flame of revolution. With our coalition, we decided that we weren't just artists seeking recognition, but rather spokespeople for a new era, icons of resistance against oppression. We met frequently in studios, cafes, and even at friends' houses, where the creative energy revolved around a common goal, capturing our stories in a collective album. We knew that our music needed to reflect not only the challenges we had faced, but also the strength and unity we now shared. Through our rhythms and lyrics, we were shaping something meaningful. We need a song that resonates with the struggle we lived through, I told my fellow artists. A song that not only narrates our story, but that is also a cry for the freedom we seek. The lyrics began to take shape, each carrying the individual pains and hopes of each member of our coalition. Richard, Fernanda, and the others became the support I needed. In a welcoming studio, where human warmth mingled with the sound of chords, we created songs that addressed our experiences, love, betrayal, justice, and our hunger for change. Each recording session became an act of resistance, and each note, a manifesto of hope. The repercussions of our work began to expand. Social media buzzed with posts about us. The hashtag Voices of Truth became a symbol of unity and resistance. Michael and Gregory tried to discredit our voices, but soon realized that the narrative was changing. The public was finally hearing our story, which began to dismantle the image of power Michael had built for so long. At one point, the two tried to turn the tide, organizing their own press conference to discredit our movement. Michael claimed that the night of the benefit event was just an attempt to destabilize a system that worked, but his words no longer carried weight. He was far from the truth. What we really sought was a new space where music was free from control and manipulation. Upon arriving at the press conference, a wave of adrenaline coursed through me. As soon as Michael began to speak, his arrogance was evident. I knew I needed to confront him, not just him, but the entire system he represented. The public was with us, and the energy of support reigned in the room. My words flowed like a river of sincerity and courage. We are here because we believe that music should be a free expression, not a victim of exploitation, I said, firmly stating my position. Today the fight isn't just personal, Michael. It's a clamor for freedom of expression. We need transparency, and the stories we want to tell aren't just ours. The auditorium went from an uncomfortable silence to a wave of applause and votes of support. Michael was losing the battle he thought he was controlling, and the truth was emerging from the shadows. Gregory, desperate, tried to rein in the situation, but his desperation was clear. He knew the tide was turning, and that the pressure would become overwhelming. With the release of the collective album fast approaching, I felt the battle was about to intensify. However, confidence was high. With each rehearsal and each performance, we formed a symphony that echoed, resonating through the walls of the music industry. The voices that had once felt silenced now rose in an overwhelming chorus. And when the album finally dropped, the world was ready. The tracks we'd created together resonated across digital platforms, reaching every corner. There was a recognition that went beyond the music. It was a cry of resistance, saying we weren't just numbers. We were artists with stories, and those stories needed to be heard. Looking at all of this, the feeling of liberation expanded. The looks that were once filled with disappointment were now overflowing with hope. The resounding resonance of our struggle was rooted in what we had created together. It was the beginning of a new era, where the harmony of revenge became the melody of freedom. This was just the beginning of our journey, but it was clear we'd finally found our voices. The future was promising, adorned by the notes of our sound and the determination we now carried. We were ready to rise and make history,